Hello, we're here with Matt Turner on That's Not the Finish. So, Matt, welcome to the show. How y'all doing today?
Good, good. Thanks for having me. How was everybody's holiday?
It was okay.
Yeah, I had a great holiday. It was nice to have some days off from work. So
I second that. I second that.
Dave, how was your holiday?
I was good. Ate a lot of ham, so I'm pretty happy.
Awesome, awesome. So we got Matt Turner over here. We're gonna be talking a little bit about just basically going through like pro wrestling training. Also just like his pro wrestling experience, and maybe some other stuff in between in a sense. So Matt, I understand that you went to the Ring of Honor school. How did that go? I also heard that you went under CM Punk, correct?
Yeah, that's true. I actually was originally trained at this small school not too far away from where I lived called Backbreakers Training Center. It's actually still running in Archibald. It's actually the guy that's running it now is a guy by the name of Justin Glory, who's done a bunch of extra work for WWE. But anyway, the guy who originally trained me was a guy by the name of Johnny Glitter. Very nice guy, but basically all we learned was kind of like lockups and bumps. And I wanted to learn more, and I was going to the Ring of Honor shows when they were running at the Murphy Rec Center in Philadelphia, and I heard through the grapevine that they were going to be opening up a school because I knew I needed to learn more. So I was thinking about going to the Chikara Wrestle Factory in Allentown, which is about an hour away from my house, because Chris Hero moved from Ohio to Allentown. He was going to be the co-trainer with Mike Quackenbush. So my original idea was to go there, but then I heard that when I was at one of the Ring of Honor shows that they were opening up a school right outside of Philadelphia, and CM Punk was going to be the head trainer. So I emailed and called and emailed and called, and they finally gave me a date. They told me it was I think it was like $50 for the tryout, and you had to. It wasn't guaranteed. You had to pass a certain tryout. They gave me a time. They gave me a address, what time to be there, and so sure enough, I went there. I think I had like they gave me like 2 weeks notice, and I always went to the gym. I still do go to the gym quite a bit, but I remember training for those 2 weeks leading up. I was training for like a marathon. I'm like, there's no way I'm not going to pass this tryout. So the tryout pretty much consisted of about 8 miles running. I want to say a few hundred squats, maybe about 200 push-ups, and like 200 sit-ups.
Sorry. So yeah, that training sounds really intense, actually. So did you like did it take you some time like just to get like in shape? Like how long would it take you to like get used to like all that training?
Not really. I mean, I kind of went in there in shape because I kind of had an idea what they were looking for. The Ring of Honor style was very much like the New Japan style. So I kind of knew that there was going to be a lot of cardio, a lot of like military style training. Like what I mean by that is, body weight training with your sit-ups, your squats, your push-ups, stuff like that. I want to say we probably did stuff like that for training for about 6 months before we even got into the ring. I mean, we were really trained like an old school Japanese style dojo. So, I mean, everybody that came out of that school, I think there was 5 or 6 of us. By the time it was go time to go on the indies, none of us got tired of wrestling just because of the way that we were trained with Punk. And then actually when we first got into the ring, so literally when Ring of Honor would do the shows on the East Coast, which back in '04, '05, '06 was quite a bit. With Samoa Joe would come in. Joe and Punk at the time were best friends. I still think they're friends now. But so Joe would stay over Punk's house for like the weekend. So Joe would come to training because training was on Mondays and Wednesdays, sometimes Thursdays because sometimes Punk would be at TNA. But Joe would come with him definitely on Wednesdays, and I can't tell you how many times we would do 6-7 miles of running, 1,000 squats, how many push-ups, how many sit-ups, and then we'd have to get in the ring and legit try to shoot like catch style wrestling with Samoa Joe. Wasn't fun. Wasn't fun, but you definitely learned a lot.
So Joe basically kind of laid you out a couple of times.
Yeah, he's super good guy. I mean, taught us a lot. Taught me a lot. Like I always picked up really well, like a lot of on submission wrestling. So he would teach you like the pro wrestling way to put on a submission, and then he would teach you like the shoot way of putting on like a certain type of submission. He would be like, I always want to try to blend the two, so this way, so like look at like meet in the middle, so it looks like it's devastating, but it's really not like killing the guy. And that's basically where I come up with my submission style because a lot of it was taught to me by Samoa Joe.
Interesting. I mean, learning from Joe is
very impressive.
you're learning from a top-notch submission expert right there. So just like for clarification here, so catch wrestling, that's basically just kind of like the really traditional kind of like submission slash like kind of like Greco, like Roman or like traditional like wrestling style in a sense.
Yeah, kind of like something similar to that. Yeah, like catch wrestling would be like a very technical, old school, like Luthez, Vergania, style. You see David Boy Smith Jr. does it quite a bit, like kind of like the MM. It's almost like a blend of like MMA and submission, judo, jiu-jitsu would kind of be like my definition of catch wrestling.
Nice. So you saw Punk there. Did you ever get to talk to him at all, or you actually meet him like formally?
Oh, at the school?
Yes, at the school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He trained me. Yeah, I wrestled CM Punk once a week for probably the better part of 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Interesting. So, I mean, because I've seen Punk at New York Comic Con, and it seems like he's it is like more of a public place, so he can be a little bit more, like he doesn't like really want to interact so much. He will talk to you. He will talk to you, but it's like a little bit like you don't want to like ask him like for an autograph or like really take like a photo with him. I heard, but from like what I heard, like he's a super nice guy, super nice. It's just that you have to like, respect his private, respect him a lot,
Yeah, he. I can't say a bad word about him. For every negative CM Punk story I hear online, I have 4 or 5 awesome stories about him. I've never had an issue with him. Super cool guy. When he went to OVW, he was very open for me to send tapes and DVDs down to OVW. He would review them. Heyman would review them. Al Snow would review him. I think DiBiase would review him. Ricky Steamboat would review him. He would just send me emails of like what everybody thought. So I mean, even when he got signed up to even when he was signed to the WWE, I always kept in contact with him. He would send me if he was in like a random country, I would get text messages like 3, 4, 5 in the morning because it would be like 10 o'clock at night there. And he would just like text me just something like just to kind of bust on me. He's like, "What are you doing? Are you sleeping? Get up! You should be doing squats." I'm like, just like I'd wake up like 7, 8 o'clock. And I'm like, he sent this thing at 3 or 4 in the morning. Where the heck is he? Then I go on my phone and they're like, they're in Japan or like they're in the European tour. It's just Then he would go like radio silent for 2 weeks, and then like something would happen. Then he would text me about this or that. But I vaguely remember the two times he won the title. I did talk to him quite a bit both those nights. When he cashed in the Money in the Bank on Edge, I talked to him quite a bit that night. I remember he goes to me, he goes, "You know what?" He's like, it doesn't seem real. He's like, "I think it just doesn't seem real. I think that they're out to get me." It's like, "I think they're going to pull the rug out of me." And then there was when he cashed in the Money in the Bank on Jeff Hardy and turned heel. I was like, it's about time, because I think that's what the WWE needed at that. They needed the Ring of Honor heel CM Punk.
Oh yeah.
I remember I was talking about that, and he was like, I've been trying to pitch this for 6 or 7 months. He's like, they don't have a heel like me in here. He's like, I don't know if they're gonna let me be the heel that I was, in Ring of Honor, but he's like, I'm gonna try to push the envelope as much as I could. So yeah, whenever people talk real bad about CM Punk, I'm like, I haven't talked to the guy in 4 or 5 years, but those people that talk bad about him, they don't know him like how I knew him. Super, super awesome guy. Got us into a lot of good indies. Helped me I had a tryout with New Japan. He helped me, with my tryout. Helped me get my tryout there. Super, super awesome guy.
Nice. So how do you feel about CM Punk being out of wrestling these days exactly?
I've actually been talking to Shane Hagedorn, who I graduated Ring of Honor school quite a bit, and I've been going back watching a lot of the older Ring of Honor stuff, and it's kind of funny. You look at that. Obviously, I would like for him to come back, but if his heart's not in it, his heart's not in it. But my thing is that he left the WWE on such bad terms because he was putting in 110%, and he was getting nowhere near that return. And I can totally see he was getting maybe 25-30% in return. I mean, he was really the most over guy there. Even when he was that champion for a year and change, he was never on any main events of the pay-per-view. They always had Cena in some sort of gimmick match. His merchandise was moving more than Cena's. He was having better matches than anybody there. But like when he left Ring of Honor, I don't know if you guys saw his last Ring of Honor match where he wrestled Cabana in the 2 out of 3 falls match. He was legit crying coming down to the ring. So it's like I'm reflecting back on that with my old classmate Shane Hagedorn. And I'm looking back on that. I'm like, man, when he left the WWE, it's going on 5 years now. He couldn't wait to get out of there. But when he left Ring of Honor, he was in tears because he kind of didn't want to go, but he had to take the next step. And my thing is, man, if he comes back, he should come back to Ring of Honor. I mean, that's the place that he put in 110% and he got in 110%. Do I think he's going to come back to wrestling? I think eventually. For someone that's that passionate about wrestling, and I've been around a long time. I've been wrestling 16 years. I've been in and out of, I've met all sorts of wrestlers that are super passionate about wrestling. There's nobody more passionate about wrestling than CM Punk. I think eventually he'll come back. I don't think he'll ever come back to the WWE. It might be this new promotion that Cody and the Bucks are starting. Might be New Japan. Might be All Japan. It might be Ring of Honor. I mean, who knows? But I think eventually he'll the bug will bite him and he'll be back.
Nice. All right, Dave's going to take over with a few more questions.
Hey, Matt, Dave here.
How we doing, Dave?
Good. How you doing? I know that some wrestlers, they tend to develop styles from their idols. What's something you see yourself doing that your idol would just say do in the ring?
A style that I developed from my idols. I tried to sell like Ricky Steamboat. I got a chance. I actually spent a weekend training with Ricky Steamboat on a lot of the things, just on the selling. I'm like, oh man, he's going to teach me the arm drag. He didn't teach anybody the arm drag, but I learned from selling. So I try to sell like Ricky Steamboat. I try to maybe pace myself kind of like a Bret Hart or Hiroshi Tanahashi.
Right.
I use, like how I said a few minutes ago, I try to use my submission style very similar to the way that Samoa Joe taught me. I was taught strikes by Kenta, now known as Hideo Itami, and Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan. They taught me striking, so I try to emulate like some of their strikes. My psychology, I try to work towards like my opponent's strengths. I try to see like do what they want to do. Like my theory on my style of wrestling is, if I get my opponent over, make my opponent look good, that makes me look good, win, lose, or draw. Like my thing is, I want to make sure my opponent looks good, and hence then I look good. But I try to take a little bit of each. Like I take my striking style from one person, my submission style from one, technical style from another, a pacing style from another, and I try to blend that all in, and I try to feed off, kind of what the crowd's buying. I don't like to call my entire match from A to Z. I try to, maybe pick out some certain points, and then kind of if I have to change it, if I have to zig when I should zag, I should do that way. If I should go left instead of going right, I'll go that way. I kind of try to feel out what the crowd wants and try to go by there.
Right. Okay. So you try to become like pretty much a good overall wrestler, striking and everything you do. That's good. Also, we saw some videos of you with the fans. You seem to be pretty over. What's your preference? Do you prefer heel or face, and why?
I definitely prefer face for several reasons. I think it's harder to be a face. It's easy. Like think about if you walk into a Walmart. It's easy to go up to somebody as soon as you walk in and push them, and they'll get mad at you. It's harder to be like, "Hey, sir, how you doing? I really like that blue shirt. It's a nice day out." Most people kind of just blow you out. Right. So I kind of like that. I like selling. I like the rush I get from selling and making a comeback. I also like kind of just putting the heel over. Like I know how to really shine up a heel. And I'd rather be the hero. I'm a big comic book fan. I like Spider-Man more than I like Dr. Octopus. That's just the way that I am. Now, if a promoter does want me to be a heel, I have no problem, being a heel, but I'd rather be a face. I want to say I've probably been a face for probably about 85% of my independent career.
Okay, nice. Dan, you have something?
Yeah, so going into just a little panel discussion that I saw at New York Comic Con. So actually, Punk was over at New York Comic Con just this past October. So I actually attended his panel discussion, which was mostly about like horror movies and just like about like film, because he's actually like a big horror film addict, which I actually found out. So one thing that was actually brought up, and this actually was related to wrestling, was the whole DIY, like do-it-yourself culture today. And during this like discussion here, Punk said that this was just really like related to like virtually almost like anything today, just with pro wrestling, with like comic books, I guess, in some way, with film. It's just really you have to just go out there and you just can't follow what people say to a sense. You have to go out there and just really do do stuff your own way. So would you say that with like how stuff with just like for example with All In, with All In and like some of these other indie wrestling promotions coming up and like just a lot of indie wrestlers, would you say that that's just like really prevalent today with how people just really have to take matters into their own hand if they want to get anywhere?
1,000%. I mean, if I get asked all the time, what is the one thing you learned from CM Punk? I mean, I learned, like I said, I wrestled the guy once a week for almost close to 2 years. But the one thing that I took away from him is you work hard, don't take no for an answer, and basically, do it yourself. I mean, what are you guys doing right now? You guys are doing your own podcast. You guys got your own thing. I have my own podcast. I'm out there, 16 years later, still busting my tail, on independent wrestling because I love it. Now my priorities are different now than it was, 10, 12 years ago when I was, working Ring of Honor. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at the way that the business has changed, especially just this past year. I mean, New Japan just making tons of money, huge splash over in the U.S. New Japan is doing so well that Chris Jericho, who's a Vince McMahon guy, doesn't want to work for Vince McMahon. He wants to work for New Japan. I mean, the best wrestlers are in Japan. I mean, you tell me, who are better guys than right now than Tanahashi, Okada, Omega, Ibushi, Naito? There really isn't. I mean, you can make an argument for some guys, but you really can't. But, All In, unbelievable. I mean, sold out in, 30 minutes. Ring of Honor, they drew 7,000 people the night before WrestleMania, and then they sold out Madison Square Garden in a matter of 3 days. I mean, it really is insane. It's this whole, I mean, Punk's right. It is this whole DIY mentality. You got to go out there and do it your own. And even if you want to look at the WWE picture, look at Daniel Bryan when he blew up 4 or 5 years ago. They didn't have that in the plans for him. He kind of slipped through the cracks with the whole yes, yes, yes thing, and the fact that he's fantastic in the ring didn't hurt either.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with that. It's just really like culture today, like not just that, but not just like in pro wrestling or a lot of these other like entertainment industries, but I would say like just like even in business too, it's just all about having to do stuff yourself. You just can't we're in like an economy, like in an environment today where it's just really hard to follow similar people's paths because there's so many other people doing the same thing that you have to do something very unique to get to to be successful, to become successful. You have to really do something completely different in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, look at the movie industry. I mean, you look at the last 10 years. What are the highest grossing films? They're all comic book movies because it's something different. It's completely different. And Marvel just keeps every movie. It's always something different. You have Ant-Man, you have Captain Marvel, you have Thor. I mean, it's just insane how exactly. You just have to be different. You have to do something to stand out. It doesn't matter. Yeah, in any industry. Yep, totally agree with you.
Awesome. All right, Dom, I believe you have some questions next.
Yeah. Going in, let's talk a little wrestling a bit. Who would you say is your favorite wrestler, and like promotion as well?
Right now to watch.
Yes.
I mean, it's. I usually say Samoa Joe just because I'm so closely knit with them. But promotion, it's definitely New Japan, hands down. But to watch, it changes daily. But I'd probably the answer I'd probably go with the most is probably Hiroshi Tanahashi, just because of just the way his storytelling is, the way he sells, the way he fires up, and just the way that the crowd gets behind him. I mean, you see when he's leaving the ring. During a main event, it always happens at the G1. Like the last 3 years, when he's leaving the ring, he's always 9 times out of 10. He's usually the last match in one of the G1 matches. When he's leaving the ring, there are people crying. There are people throwing towels at him for him to wipe their sweat on and throw it back. I mean, we haven't seen that since the Von Erichs in Dallas. I mean, it's insane how over the guy is. So I'd probably, I mean, if you asked me this answer 20 minutes from now, I may say Ibushi. I might say Jay Lethal. I may say Daniel Bryan, but if you're asking me right now, kind of on the spot, I'd have to say Tanahashi.
All right. Yeah. In your matches, was there a match that stuck out that you have a favorite, like one of your own matches that you've had before, or?
I had a match with Devin Moore. I don't know if you guys remember him from CZW. We get to the building, and he was like, we were supposed to go to was a 25 or 30-minute time limit draft. And he's like, he walks up to me, he goes, hey, man, he goes, I know what you do. You know what I do. You want to just call it in the ring? And I'm like, yeah, that works for me. And we went to the time limit draft, and everything felt right. Timing felt good. And we called literally nothing. Literally nothing. I knew the moves he did. He knew the moves that I did. We called the whole entire thing in the ring. And we had I think it was about 200 and some odd people in the crowd. We had everybody standing up, giving us a standing ovation, chanting 5 more minutes. And all of a sudden, here comes the promoter out the microphone. And I was like, please don't give me 5 more minutes. Not that I couldn't do it. I'm just like, I have 5 minutes to F this up. This thing went flawless for the 25. I think it was 25 minutes, and then we went another 5. So then I think we went 30. I said, this thing went flawlessly. And then they gave us another 5 minutes, and those 5 minutes went well. There was that, and then I got to work Chris Hero in the ECW arena when they were doing the Ring of Honor CZW feud, which that whole feud that they did was the coolest thing I've ever done in wrestling, because it just felt so real. Like CZW were like, we looked at them as like the hardcore, wrestling group that didn't know how to wrestle, and we were like the pure, Ring of Honor. We were the pure wrestling, the hard hitting, great psychology, great storytelling, most rabid fans. That was really cool. So probably those two would probably stick out to me the most.
And speaking of like all the different styles and the different types of wrestling, is there like certain moves that you like to use the most, or like a certain style that you would like prefer using?
I blend like British technician. Like I like to do like the British technical style, like in the beginning to kind of build things up. I like to counter with like a lot of strikes when I'm on the cell, and then like for the finish, I'll do like a lot of big moves. Like I use like a roaring forearm. I'll use a brain buster. I use a bunch of different style of submissions. Obviously, I use the rear naked choke, Fujiwara armbar. Those are 2 moves that like I said was taught to me by Samoa Joe. I train a little bit in MMA, so I try to use some of that stuff, like a triangle choke. But yeah, I like to like the style that I like to use is basically a lot of the old Ring of Honor style, because that's what I was trained in. A lot of the New Japan style stuff that you see today.
Part of being like a wrestler, you're providing a story to all the fans. Is there anyone that you would consider like a Steamboat to your Flair, or like?
Years ago, probably when we were first starting, I was teaming with a kid by the name of Anthony Franco, who graduated the Ring of Honor dojo with me for first class. We were teaming up, and we were feuding with Cheech and Cloudy. You guys might be familiar with them, because I think they're up your way. They're called Up in Smoke. We were feuding with them in Chikara, and we just had some of the best matches. Like we went out there and like we would steal the show. If they had us in a tag match, which I think for about a year we were what we call in the business married to them, because we would wrestle them almost on every Chikara show. But I remember we had a show we had to go on before Quack and Hero. And we got done, and we were leaving the arena, and everybody was telling us that our match was the best in the show. It was better than Quack and Hero. I think Claudio Cesaro wrestled, I want to say maybe Jigsaw, who's fantastic. A lot of people were telling us, you guys had the best match. You guys had the best match. So I think that even though it was in a tag sense, that would probably be the Flair and Steamboat comparison. Would be me and Anthony Franco versus Cheech and Cloudy, but. Hopefully getting a couple more out there that I have the Flair Steamboat relationship with, where we can kind of just go out there and just put it together when it's going to be good regardless of what happens.
Nice. Yeah, that was really intriguing what you said. So, would you say that there is a like solid gimmick that you have in place like right now, or like how did you go about like creating your own gimmick in a sense?
I kind of just like I said, the style that I was trained in, the Ring of Honor style, there wasn't much gimmick, so it's kind of like just being like a really good wrestler. Look at like my all-time favorite wrestler is Ricky Steamboat, and he never really had a gimmick. I mean, they in the '90s they put him with the whole breathing fire thing, but like my whole thing is just go out there and be a good wrestler, because I was always like Matt Sydal and Roderick Strong when I was in Ring of Honor would always give me great advice, and the advice that they would always give me is be the wrestler that you want to see. Like do the things in the ring that you want to do, and I'm like, I just want to see good wrestling. Like Jim Cornette always says, it's sports entertainment or an entertaining sport. To me, it's an entertaining sport. I consider it pro wrestling. I don't consider it sports entertainment. So I really don't have I'm just kind of like the old, like the fiery baby face, shining up the hill, selling, not dying, but selling enough where it's believable. Getting the crowd where I need to get to. But now my gimmick is just going out there and just being a wrestler, just giving the fans more than their money's worth.
Nice. So, what would you say your dream match is?
That's still possible, or like if I can go back in time, or
just like in the future. I guess like if you could go back in time, that would be really interesting too. But like, I was just saying, like,
you guys have a DeLorean that I can borrow?
Maybe I have one in my garage. I can go double check what like what lies underneath the floorboards in a sense. But no, I would probably say like in the future, like if there was like a wrestler that's like really hot right now, or even like an up and coming wrestler from another promotion or a promotion that or even like one of your friends that you would want to have a match with, like maybe at like say Wrestle Kingdom or just like anywhere. It doesn't even have to be like on like a really big stage.
Well, I mean, there's a couple. I mean, I've been teaming for the past year and a half with my good buddy Andy Hatter. We do have a podcast as well, Calling the Power Ring. Cheap plug. Obviously, I mean, if you're telling me I can wrestle any team, I mean, I'd have me and him tag up against, the obvious answer would be like the Young Bucks, the Briscoes, the Golden Lovers. I would love to wrestle Timothy Thatcher. I think his style, my style, would be really, really good. He has that no-nonsense style. I would love to wrestle Hero again, Cassius Ohno, Chris Hero, whatever you want to call him. Matt Riddle, before he got signed. He actually, before he moved down to Orlando, only lived about 15 minutes away from me. And I didn't know that. I was kind of trying to seek him out to see if I can, try to do something there. I mean, there's just tons of guys that are out there. There's Clay Drasher is a good friend of mine. He's up and coming. Tony Deppen, he's up and coming. I would love for those two guys to team up to go against me and Andy Hatter. I mean, there's a lot of good talent that's out there. We actually do have kind of a little bit of a dream match coming up on the 12th of January for True Wrestling, which is going to be broadcast live on Powerbomb.tv. Me and Andy, since we've been teaming up for the past year and a half, we've been getting asked when we're going to wrestle this really good team coming up, Unbreakable Fury, and they actually just told us about a week ago, so we're going to have that match. So that's kind of almost like a Pennsylvania indie dream match and I'm breaking it right here. I haven't really told, outside of my wife, I haven't told anybody that we're having that match, so you guys get the exclusive. So
there we go, the exclusive episode.
Yeah,
Nice.
There's a lot. I mean, if Alex Shelley ever came out of retirement, I would love to wrestle him and Saban. The Motor City Machine guys. I spent a lot of time with those guys in IWA Mid-South and just picking their brains. Those guys are fantastic. But yeah, I mean, there's just, we'd be here till next week for me listening just the tag teams alone that I like to wrestle.
Nice. So yeah, sounds like there's some big dreams right there.
Yeah.
In your opinion, given in today's climate, like, would you say that it's beneficial to stay in the indies or to just go to WWE or like one of the big names? I know like New Japan's like on fire right now and doing really well, and probably it would be really beneficial to people to go to that big name. But like in this case here, like would it be better like to just say like on one of like the more independent indie circuits, the really small ones or middle-sized ones too, or would you say to go to like a big name like the WWE and then go back maybe like to the indies in a sense? Any sort of
it all depends. Yeah, I mean, it all depends on really what you want. I mean, some guys only want to go WWE. I mean, when I was a kid, obviously going to Pennsylvania, WWF, WWE was the big thing. And once I got into high school and I realized that I was 110 pounds soaking wet, holding a brick, that it wouldn't. There's no way, there's no way that that's not what they're looking for. That's what they're looking for. So my thing was, okay, when I get out of high school, obviously I'll go to college because it's going to make my parents happy. But I got to go to wrestling school because I wanted to go to ECW. And then that folded. And then the next big thing was Ring of Honor. And when I went to my first Ring of Honor show, I was like, all these guys are my size. This crowd is going absolutely crazy for every match. This is where I need to be. So Ring of Honor was always, once I got, into wrestling school and graduated wrestling school, Ring of Honor was always my dream. But to kind of, I kind of got sidetracked there. But to kind of answer your question, like I said, it all depends on what you're looking for. But I think if you go to WWE too early in your career, if you get lost in the shuffle, you never heard from again. I mean, look at like Sean O'Hare, Mark Jindrak, all those, Ken, the guys in the Spirit Squad, outside of Ziggler. I mean, none of those guys. I mean, they got pushed so far so quick that's like once they get knocked down, it's like, what do I do? I've never been in this position before. I always heard Regal say, go everywhere, and then when you get to like towards the end of your career, then go to WWE, because that's the place where you're going to make the most money, but you're going to learn everything elsewhere. I mean, look at guys like Jericho, Guerrero, Benoit. Those guys, when they came to the WWE, everybody knew who they were. They were over from the minute they walked out of the curtain because they were polished, everywhere. Not everybody can be, Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar, just, being pushed to the moon and then kind of staying there for the good majority of their career.
So this is actually. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, I like I said, just to kind of wrap up the question. Yeah, it all really depends on your preference. But I always say, get your experience in the Indies. Try to go overseas. Go over to Europe. Try to go to Japan. Go to Mexico. Learn every style possible. So this way, then whoever you're working, if you get to a WWE, if you get to a tryout match, if you get to an NXT, you can adapt to that person's style to make that person look good, which in turn makes you look good.
Yeah, so this was actually something that we have discussed a couple of times before, about the talent on NXT currently just not really being like names that really fit like NXT, which is like, supposed to be like the developmental branch of WWE. A lot of times the people that are on NXT right now, like they're already pretty, like well-known names in a sense. And I know like when Samoa Joe was on NXT and Shinsuke Nakamura, Bobby Roode, they like weren't really like, you would picture like NXT guys more or less like kind of like NXT as like, indie guys in a sense, but they were indie guys, but they were big names in a sense, so it kind of feels like WWE, like even with NXT, like it really doesn't have that anymore, like where they have like these people like just kind of like came out of nowhere and just kind of built themselves up on WWE. It's really is more like you have to make something and like get your name out there a lot and become somebody in pro wrestling before you go into WWE in a sense.
Yeah, and I think even NXT is kind of its own brand. I think Evolve right now, Gabe Sapolsky's federation, I think Evolve's now the feeder system for WWE. I don't even think it's NXT, because you watch those takeover shows. You watch those takeover shows back to back with the WWE shows. When there's you had the takeover show on Saturday and then the Sunday WWE show. When's the last time that the Sunday show was even half as good as the NXT show? It's never happened. It's never happened. And again, it all depends on preference of what you like for wrestling. And I hear that and I'm like, okay, I get that. I grew up on Hulk Hogan. If somebody told me Hulk Hogan was coming out on Monday Night Raw, he's gonna rip the T-shirt off and say, what's up, brother? I'm tuning in. Even though that he's not, I'd rather see a good wrestling match, but still that's my flavor. That's what I grew up on. Hogan knew how to work the crowd, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's like, okay, listen to the crowd. Even if you think the WWE show is better because that's your flavor, you would rather see Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar, and that's fine. If that's what people like, that's what they like. But listen to the crowd. What's getting the bigger reaction, Roman versus Brock or Gargano versus Ciampa? Clearly the crowds are more into the NXT show, and I think it has to do with the fact I think just Hunter is more, he has his ear to the ground. He has he's listening to what the people want, where I think Vince is basically kind of almost turning into like, Vern Gagne, Fritz von Erich back in the day, where, man, they had his finger on the pulse for so long that he kind of just like, I can just keep my finger on here and I'll be okay. And I think he just kind of especially now with the XFL and selling his stock, I just think he's stretching himself too thin. And Triple H is all about NXT, building up that brand. And man, I mean, look what he's done. I mean, look at that roster in the last 2 or 3 years. You have everybody in the Undisputed Era. I mean, look what he did with Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen. Who would have ever thought he would have made it to the main roster as fast as he did and been the Universal Champion as long as he was? I mean, that guy is super talented, but that's not what Vince ever looks for. I mean, he definitely stood out. Samoa Joe, Nakamura, El Generico, Sami Zayn. I mean, look at it now. Matt Riddle, Aleister Black, Gargano, Ciampa. I mean, that roster is continuing to be loaded. I mean, look what they've done for the women's division. I mean, you can give them credit for giving the NXT women's division is what really gave the WWE women's division the boom. It's where Becky started. It's where Charlotte started. Asuka started. Sasha started, Bailey started, and when Mickie James came back, she went down to NXT, had those good matches with Asuka, and then called right back up. I mean, it just seems like everything that they do with NXT is gold. And a lot of that has to do with Hunter. A lot of that has to do with Regal. And a lot of it, even though he's passed on a few years, a lot of it has to do with Dusty Rhodes. I mean, that was him and Hunter's breeding ground. It was their federation. And obviously Hunter learned a lot from Dusty. He's still using, that today. And those NXT shows are just blow away shows every time. Every time.
Yeah, a lot of truth behind that. I even just saw a tweet earlier before that the whole women's division is what it is today because of NXT and the women that started there. Completely true because of that. All right, so we have another question here. I think it's from Dom.
Yeah, just speaking on the whole situation of NXT and like WWE being a sole separate thing. What are your thoughts on like the way they transition like superstars from NXT over to the main roster? Do you feel that they're doing things the right way with that, or if they should go a different route, or what
do you guys think? Not good.
I mean,
it's not good. I'm not here to bury anybody. By no means am I here to tell the WWE how to do their job. They're a multi-billion-dollar company, but it's like, I mean, other than Owens, who else has gotten over? I mean, they completely dropped the ball with Joe. I mean, they had something really hot with him and AJ. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, Nakamura, crazy over. Balor, they're finally starting to get behind Balor, but it's like jeepers. I mean, name me 5 guys on the main roster that's better, overall than Balor. He's one of the most over guys. There's not too many people better in the ring with him. They're finally doing something with McIntyre. I really, really like him. And I kind of figured he'd transition well because he's a good wrestler. He's a really good talker. He looks good. He's what Vince wants, and he's what everybody else wants. So he's getting he's doing well. But look at all the ones that they're completely dropping the ball with. Bobby Roode, the Ascension, the Revival, Nakamura. And I think Nakamura is the biggest one. There's no reason why that guy shouldn't be the new generation of what Great Muta was in the late 90s, late 80s, early 90s, NWA, WCW. There's no way. There's charisma. He's just as good as Muta was, back then. Obviously, he's a better talker because Muta didn't talk at all. He had Gary Hart, so I mean that didn't hurt. But yeah, there's a lot of people that they're just dropping the ball with, and then I see that they're calling up like 5 or 6 more people. Like, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen there. I mean, obviously, they'll get paid more, but I think they're just going to get lost in the shuffle. I mean, they're just signing guys left and right. I mean, they have the NXT UK thing now, 205 Live. I mean, they're signing people left and right, and they just don't know what to do with them in most senses.
Yeah. Which promotion are you working in right now, and what are your thoughts on the promotion that you're currently working for?
I'm working for. I was working for Grand Slam Wrestling, but they're kind of taking a little bit of a break. They were great to work for. Kind of just any ideas I had, they were okay with. I'm working for Ace Fusion Pro Wrestling actually this Saturday. They're great to work with. So I walk in, the promoter, I ask the promoter what he wants, and he'll tell me just do what you need to do. I'm like, well, how much time? Don't worry about it. Do what you need to do. True Wrestling, they're on fire right now. They have a lot of really good talent. Ace Austin, Clay Drasher, Trajan Horn, a lot of really good talent there. And they just signed a deal with Powerbomb TV, and that's really starting to blow up as far as the internet services. All the promotions that I work for, I have no problems with. It's just basically I basically ask them when they send me a message or call me or text me, ask me if I'm available for this day. Just ask them what they need done, so this way I kind of have an idea, when I get there, and if plans change. But no, I don't have an axe to grind. I got no problem with any of the promotions that I'm working for right now. I'm just going out there. I've been doing this 16 years now. I'm just going out there. I'm just having fun.
That's great. What are some of the other hobbies that you're into besides wrestling? Like, what are you doing when you're not wrestling?
When I'm not wrestling, I'm spending time with my wife and my daughter. Are in the gym or doing the normal 40-hour-a-week job. Any other free time I have with that is pretty much spent on comic books. I'm a huge comic book nerd. I get my, I go every Wednesday when the new books come out. When the movies come out, I'm the first one in line to go see it. So I'm really, really busy. I mean, my day, just to give you an idea just how my days are, I'm usually up 4 or 5 days a week. I usually get up around 4. I'm at the gym about 4:15, come home around 6, make sure my wife or my daughter are ready to, my wife's ready to go for work if she needs anything, which she doesn't. My wife she's superwoman. She can do anything. Make sure my daughter is okay if she needs anything. I get ready for work, go to work, come home, do the whole family thing. Any free time, I try to watch wrestling, or me and my wife will try to watch some of the TV shows that we like. She likes the comic book shows too, like The Flash and Arrow, Big Bang Theory. So I'll just spend time with her, and then it's like, my 9:30, my day shot. So I really don't have too much free time outside of wrestling, family, work. Obviously the gym goes in with wrestling. So any free time, I'll read comic books and maybe a little PS4. A little God of War if I have any time there. Yeah, huge fan of the God of War franchise.
Oh yeah, it's great.
All right, Matt. I have a question for you. How did you get into wrestling, and what was your inspiration into doing it?
I've always liked wrestling. I don't know what my earliest memories of wrestling. I remember it was a couple days after WrestleMania 3. So this was 80. This is 87. Not that I want to show my age here, but I remember I liked wrestling beforehand. I remember we used to have Sunday dinner. I come from a very old school Italian family, so we used to have the old Sunday dinners over my grandparents' house. And I remember there was a whole bunch of people over, more people than over there than normal, and somebody had a tape of WrestleMania 3. And I watched like the first 4 or 5 matches. Obviously, WrestleMania 3 was drawn on Hogan and Andre the Giant. I was a huge Hogan fan growing up. Who wasn't? And I remember the guy who had the tape, his wife came and said, "We're leaving in about 20 minutes. You watch one more match." And he looked at me and he goes, "What do you want to watch, Hogan and Andre or Steamboat Savage?" And I was like, "I want to watch Hogan and Andre." Like, "No, you sure?" Because Steamboat and Savage was really, really good. And I think I still at that age probably thought wrestling was a shoot. I don't think anybody smartened me up at the time. So like, no, I'm like, I want to see Hogan and Andre. He's like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Yeah." And now obviously this is my first memory of wrestling, but obviously I'd liked it before because I knew who Hogan was. So obviously watch the match, and then maybe about a couple months later, my dad rented me the VHS, and I just remember being completely blown away by Steamboat and Flair. So I would watch wrestling every weekend, and then my dad would take me to the CYC in Scranton. They would come, I think, once a month or once every other month. Which, fun fact, the CYC in Scranton was actually Gorilla Monsoon's favorite building to perform in. So I'd go to the shows, and it was just like it's not enough. It's not enough. I need to be in the ring. I need to be in the ring. And then I realized my dad was a bigger guy. He was like a linebacker when he played high school football. He was 6'3", like 240, bigger guy. My mom was like 5'2", 100 pounds. So I got my mom's genes. I was always waiting for my dad's genes to kick in. But I started lifting when I was 17, and I just got the bug. And I was like, I know I wanted to go to wrestling school, but my parents were very adamant that I go to college for a backup plan. And obviously, as usual, my parents were right. So, it was just like one thing lead to another. I was watching it on TV. No, I need to see it live. That's not enough. I would see it live. That's not enough. I need to be in the ring. And then once I got in the ring, it was just like, I just kind of need to stick at that. So it was just like one thing would lead to another. It was like it was never satisfactory enough for one thing, and I just had to be in that ring. But I can't say like one person really influenced me. I mean, I guess if you're saying one person, it would be Hogan, because without Hogan, the scene that the era that I grew up in, where I grew up in, wrestling wouldn't be what it is today.
Oh yeah, Hogan was a big figure in wrestling. Where do you see yourself going with this? What does the future hold for Matt Turner?
Man, I don't know. I just continue to go out there and just bust my tail. And when I get booked, and that's really about it. It's not like how it was 10, 12 years ago where I was constantly emailing and calling promoters and sending my stuff out there. It's just, I'm so busy. My daughter's 14. I'm so busy with stuff like that. I love being at home on the weekends. At the same time, I like being on the road. So I'm just going to continue to wrestle until I can't anymore, or until I stop being booked. But I don't see that happening. I'm probably in the best shape I've been in a long, long time. Me and Andy Head are just, when you're teaming with one of your best friends you have a ton in common with, and you don't butt heads on anything, and you're constantly texting each other ideas on promos and psychology. And actually, he just texted me about 5 minutes ago about something that he wants to do. It just makes it for so much fun. So I guess I'll probably just, I'm just gonna keep doing this until probably until it stops being fun, and it hasn't stopped being fun since the second I watched it. So so really, there's kind of really no end game in sight for me. So
it's good. It's good to hear. It's good to hear.
Stay tuned, folks.
Okay, so a final question. What advice would you give aspiring wrestlers, say, coming up in the business right now?
Don't quit. That was the advice that Chris Jericho gave. When I first started wrestling, I met Chris Jericho at an Ozfest when he first started touring with Fozzy, and I told him I just started independent wrestling. Every advice he goes, don't give up. Don't give up. He's like, he told me the advice that Paul Stanley gave him is the people that tell you can't do it are the people that you can't do it. It's the advice I tell my daughter all the time. Whatever you want to do in life, you can do. Don't let anybody tell you no. And like I said a little bit ago, the only person that can stop you from realizing any of your dreams, whether it's wrestling, whether it's being in a band, being in a movie, the only person that can stop you from doing it is you. And right now, I mean, there's so many different brands that are out there. I mean, Raw's its own brand, SmackDown's own brand. There's 2 NXTs, there's 205 Live, Ring of Honor, New Japan, Impact's really good right now. Now you have, the European indie scene is insane with Progress and RPW, and then you have this this All Elite promotion. Probably we're gonna be hearing about soon. There's no reason why anybody can't get their foot in the door in there. They just have to work harder than the next person. So yeah, my best advice is the only person that can stop you is you.
Great advice right there. It's really it's definitely what you have to just keep with stuff. That's just the whole point here is you just have to keep rolling with stuff. When life starts getting tough, you just gotta start punching back. You just can't just lie down and just give up. Well, Matt, it was wonderful having you on the show. Really, thank you for coming on. Before we end here, what upcoming shows you're going to be performing at, and where can our listeners find you at?
Sure. Me and Andy Hedder, we do have our own podcast on the Podcast of Pennsylvania Network. It's called Calling It in the Power Ring. It's pretty much all comics, all wrestling. It's our half comics, half wrestling. We do talk a little video games, a little bit, weightlifting, gym stuff in there. But it's mostly about comics and pro wrestling. It's on the Podcast of Pennsylvania Network. You can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean as well. Against Calling It the Power Ring. By all means, I always tell my fans, if you want to reach out to me, I'm easy to get a hold of. You guys know that you got a hold of me on Twitter. Just search Matt Turner. Any questions, feel free to answer. I'm under Instagram as well. Matt Turner. Just type in Matt Turner, and you'll see a funny looking guy with the spandex on. That's me. And then I have this Saturday, me and Andy Hedder are teaming up in Palmerton, Pennsylvania for Ace Fusion Pro Wrestling. Then me and Andy Hedder again, we are teaming up again on the 12th of January for True Wrestling. And then I believe the end of January we have a double shot for Backbreakers Training Center, who they just signed a deal with Fight TV and Ace Fusion Pro Wrestling again. So yeah, all my social media stuff is under Matt Turner. So by all means, feel free to look me up on there.
Great, awesome, wonderful interview. Thank you so much again for coming on, and we'll catch you all next time on another episode of That's Not the Finish.